and welcome to Money Talks. I'm your host, Ms. Rufo. Our focus this semester is to gain an understanding of management and leadership in our community. We'll be welcoming community leaders, business owners, and managers into the studio to talk with us about the important lessons they have learned in their careers and ultimately provide the audience with advice and tips on how to bring out the best leadership skills. In this episode, and before we bring in our community leaders, we reach out to our students here at Algonquin Regional High School. They will present their concerns, questions, suggestions, and visions of management and leadership in their lives. Please welcome Senior Natalie Bork, Senior Mia McAuliffe, and Junior Derek Blanchard. Welcome everybody to the panel. Thank you for volunteering.
Hello.
Yeah, of course.
Right off the bat, can you let the audience know if you have held a job before, if you have, maybe how many managers you've worked with during that time?
So I've worked at two places, and over the time I've had 4 managers and 3 at the same location.
I've worked for about 2 different companies, and I've had over 5 different managers at least that I've worked with.
I've worked at 3 different companies and I've had 4 different managers.
Nice. So we have experts here in the audience to talk about management and leadership with us today. So to start off, what are some important traits that you think managers should possess during the workday?
Definitely good organizational skills, because not only are they trying to kind of manage themselves, but they're also typically managing a whole team. And somebody who's genuine, like a nice person to talk to, just to strike up any conversation with, and probably an honest person as well. It's definitely a big one.
Nice.
I also feel like a good manager would have to have good decision-making skills as well to make crucial decisions for a company.
And I think going off of both of them, consistency is huge. Especially for me, my bosses were managing the children as well as her own employees, so consistency was really important.
Consistency, nice. Now, do you think you can be a good manager and maybe not a good leader? Or a good leader and not a good manager?
Yes, I would say that. One of my past managers, he was a nice guy, and he was a good leader. We all kind of look up to him, but when it came to managing, he was just an unorganized mess almost, and it was difficult to work with him in a sense like that.
I had a similar situation. It's all about kind of rewarding achievements that your employees have, because I think that was something that she had struggled with in the past. She didn't, she wasn't grateful for what we did, but she liked to kind of reprimand when we didn't do anything, So yeah.
Also, kind of going off what Natalie said, I've worked for a manager who was a good manager, but he was a terrible leader. So it's good to see oh, there's good decisions being made, but when you have a bad leader, it's just nothing seems to be working right for you at all.
Right.
Now, does anybody want to clarify maybe the difference between a leader and a manager? You said, give me some specifics in terms of what maybe makes a good leader.
I would say a leader is somebody who's willing to show people what the right way to do something is, but at the same time they're willing to do the same thing as you. They're not just going to give you something and walk away. They motivate people as well. And yeah, I would say the motivation's the big thing right there, is that if you don't have people that are motivated and willing to do work for you, then how are you going to lead people in the right direction?
Right. Well, can I just, if I may interrupt, what are some ways that maybe your managers have motivated you, positively or negatively? Anybody?
I think it kind of goes back to bad reviews, not gifting the good things that have happened, and just again, it's a huge motivation thing when it comes to leadership. I think if you don't show your employees that you care enough, then they're not going to want to put that effort in either.
Right. Yeah, and I had a different situation where my boss did motivate us by showing us our reviews throughout the holiday season, because that's our busiest time of year. And the fact that he was showing us that we were doing well obviously motivated us to want to keep doing well.
Now, do you think that it's different managing a teenager versus an adult? I don't know if you've worked in companies where there are mixed employees, you have the adults and you have the kids, so to speak. Has anybody witnessed a manager having to change their tone or their motivation based on the age of the employee?
Well, I think that if, depending on like what you're doing, but I think as a whole they should kind of be treated the same, and I think in some situations they aren't, because like I think in situations like there's been a lot of underestimation of like teenage workers, especially if it's just like a task job. So I think in a sense they should be treated the same.
I've worked in an environment where teenagers and older adults have been working together, and so I feel like it's not really a difference, because being a teenager, like, you have to begin the process of like becoming an adult. So I feel like in most situations it doesn't really affect me personally, but it might in other ways.
Yeah, I think treating a teenager and an adult who have a similar job and work in the same work environment, I think it's important to treat them the same, to show that everybody's kind of on this even playing field. And yeah, it brings the teenager up maybe a different level, kind of matures them and shows them what it's really like to be responsible and to hold themselves accountable.
So you're saying give those teens some responsibility, make them feel like they can make decisions at work.
And it may be a chance for some managers. I think that's definitely they're putting their faith in somebody maybe they don't know from more than a resume. But I think part of being a good manager and a good leader is taking that risk.
So I think it all also depends on like if they are doing the same job, if they are doing the same task. Like if it's like
Yeah.
a hierarchical kind of thing, like I think that is different. Like I think depending on who's managing and what the situation is like depends.
Are there any managers or management situations where you thought, oh, I wish they had done that differently? Maybe there are management traits that probably should be avoided in certain situations?
I feel like managers need to have the ability to keep calm in some situations, because obviously like something's going to go wrong in any given time in a workplace. And if a manager just loses it and starts like going off on an employee, then like that employee might just feel bad about herself for like the rest of the shift or whatever, and then just not give her full effort just worrying about that. So if managers are like good and forgiving and understanding of what happened, then I feel like a lot more gets done.
Yeah, I had a similar situation, especially like working with kids. Like if you're gonna reprimand an employee, I don't think it should be done in front of like the children, because then they doubt your own discipline, like you know, situation. So I think it's true. They do really need to keep calm in some scenarios.
And for me, honesty is a huge thing. Being honest with your employees. I had a manager who was dishonest about the hours that he worked, and it kind of made me and my other employees upset and kind of lose respect for him, because he was so greedy in the sense where he didn't seem to really care enough about his job to show up on time, but he would still take the same amount of pay even though we were putting in the extra time that he had to do, but we had to make up.
Right. Now, how would the two of you handle a situation, and let's say an employee's late to work all the time, or you know, an employee doesn't treat a customer correctly? That employee probably needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So as a manager, how do you address that employee?
Well, I think it's also about honesty, because like I think the right timing is also very important.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that like in the middle of like a shift or in the middle of like is that I think you need to take time to kind of like reflect on the scenario and then like from there go on maybe the next day. But obviously if there was a problem, like it must be addressed. But I don't think that like directly after it happened is always the best time.
Yeah, emotions and feelings might be high in that moment depending on the situation. So even at the end of the shift, just taking your employee aside and being like, listen, you need to fix this. You can't do this. You need to learn how to kind of deal with the situation in a better way.
Right. And employee retention is very important for businesses.
Right.
Have any of you on this panel left a position for maybe for advancement, maybe because, you didn't necessarily get along with the manager. Have any of you moved on for any reason whatsoever?
I moved on from a job that I had over the summer mainly. I just didn't see eye to eye with my manager because me and him didn't really get along on some things. And also I felt like I wasn't getting paid for the level of work that was expected out of me because they expected a very high level of work out of me, and to make the pay I was getting, I just felt it wasn't worth it.
I've left jobs like seasonally, but I almost left my current job and like had similar situation, kind of went to them and was like, I don't think that my pay is realistic to the work that I'm doing. So yeah, no, I'm still there, but like that's the situation, yeah.
Right. And I haven't had that experience, luckily, so far. But I do know some of my employees, they showed interest in leaving their position due to disagreements with a manager. And especially when I was working with kids too, it's a big thing. I mean, you're not just doing a task, you're also trying to watch a kid, and you have a level of responsibility there. And if you guys aren't on the same page about that, it cannot be good.
It can lead to a lot of tension, let me tell you.
Yeah, lead to bad things.
Well, it's good to know that you're fighting for a higher pay.
Yeah.
I love that. So that's always great. Everybody should get paid more, right?
Yes.
Now, this semester, we're going to invite business leaders in from the community, various owners and managers. Can you think of any questions that we should be asking these managers and leaders? Dealing with teenagers, dealing with customers, retaining employees, motivation. Is there anything pressing that these business leaders should know about what's happening in the community?
I think it's important for us to ask them like what they see in teen employment and like what do they look for. Because I know that like it's hard for a lot of high schoolers to get jobs because they're like, oh, my resume doesn't have anything on it. I've never worked anywhere before. But I think in that sense, extracurriculars are really important, as well as like sports. Maybe you were a team captain. Like I think it would be really interesting to hear from a business owner, like what do they look for?
Right. Yeah. That and like we talked about how to deal with an employee who has made a mistake or is showing up late to work, something like that. Or even a dispute between two employees, because that can be
That's also
difficult to
issue.
deal with. Yeah, say if somebody gets a raise and another person doesn't, like how do you kind of deal with that? Because you're overseeing both of these people who now have tension and they need to work together to do their job, but they're not. So I guess certain situational questions would definitely be good to see.
I'd also ask them about like the pros and cons of hiring teenagers, because I'm sure there's both to them for whatever various reasons there might be, because it's also like kind of hard hiring teenagers because they have so many different things going on in their life with schools, sports, outside activities, like whatever it is. But I've seen a lot of managers able to do it so well, I don't know how.
Well, and these are great questions. And hopefully, as the semester progresses, these business owners that we invite into the studio will be able to answer some of the questions that our students here at Algonquin have. So that's it for episode 1. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for episode 2. Thank you.
Good job, friends.